warm welcome, everyone, to LOFA. So we've got the additional council meeting today where we've got a number of agenda items. This afternoon, we've also got the Performance Audit and Risk Committee. We'll get into this agenda as soon as I can get back to where I need to be on the agenda. So we have an apology from Councillor Wallstein. Are there any other apologies? Someone would like to move, we accept that one. Councillor Tavendale, Councillor McRovey, thank you. Those in favour say aye. Aye. And against, that's carried. Thank you. Do we have any declarations of interest? None. Okay, we did have someone intending to speak at public forum, and we haven't been advised yet that they're here, so we will carry on, and if they turn up, we will see how we can slot them into the timetable as we go. Just moving to the decision reports, so item 4.1, the Waitaki Indoor Sports and Events Centre location. And just ask Mr. Palmley if he wants to speak to this. I was looking for Mr. Vandersbeek, who was outside, but he hasn't. Oh, has he joined via Zoom? Okay, right.
He's coming in, yeah. Through the screen. We left him outside.
Okay, so Mr. Vandersbeek, just in time. So we're just on to the event centre location report. If you'd just like to speak to that, introduce it, and we'll get on with discussions. So just waiting while he finds his place in his agenda as well.
Yeah, thank you. My apologies. I was waiting for the public session. Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Thank you, councillors. As you'll be aware, we recently went out to the community to consult on the preferred location for the Waitaki Event Centre. We had hearings last Monday. In essence, 90% of our submissions were in favour of the locations being proposed. We heard the hearings, as I say, last Monday, and now it's, I guess, timely for you to decide. The recommendation in front of you is that we continue with the proposed location. We feel that it meets the needs of the community. Some of the concerns or questions that were raised as far as the site included other options that were considered, and there's been quite a extensive and thorough process that started 3 or 4 years ago with the Sport Otago survey. They considered, I think it was 18 different variations over quite a number of sites. Further investigations we did as part of the business case established that there were some concerns around some of the other possible sites at Central Park with its previous use. So yeah, we are recommending that we continue along the lines with the current site.
Okay, thank you very much. And we just don't have the camera quite lined up with the microphones quite matching yet. So just be aware of that. Hopefully most of them are. But anyway, we've certainly have looked at a lot of the issues that have been raised, and I'm pretty confident that all of the main concerns have been taken care of. Does anyone have any questions to start off with? Someone like to move recommendation then? Councillor Thompson, and seconded Deputy Mayor Tavendale. Okay, discussion. Councillor Kingan, thank you.
Yeah, I'm happy with this site, but and there was some submitters the other day that submitted about removal of the grandstand. I thought about that a little bit more over the last week, and looking back, Centennial Park was designed and built as a dual purpose for cricket and for rugby back in the day. And I mean, back in the day was a while ago, because I remember playing my rugby there, and I'm not going to tell you how long ago that was, but I mean, that stand's getting a bit of age on it now. The thing is that if it could be moved a bit, it would mean that the rugby public would have a more intimate ground, as are most of the rugby grounds in the world now, that they're much closer to their spectators and makes for a better experience. So, and then, but on top of that, I've looked at the maps and had a just, I mean, if you like, a farmer's look at it. And I look at the parking area at Centennial Park that's there now and see how full it gets at times, a lot of the time, in fact. And the likes of the yellow area in the proposed area is nowhere near as big as that. So, you know, parking is a thing that's got to be well and truly looked at. And even expansion of the stadium itself in the future, it would be really nice to build it somewhere where there is a little bit of room to expand. So I just want to make sure that we take into account these requests, because I think they are really very valid and are worth considering at this point rather than waiting later on and thinking we made a mistake there. So that, I just point that out. From most supportive otherwise.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. Eric, do you have any feedback on that?
Yeah, certainly. And our preliminary investigation so far indicates there is room for expansion. Previously, we did have a conversation about there is also possibilities with St. Kevin's as well in the future, who are very happy to work with us. But even just the current site does provide for some expansion. On those occasions where there may be additional parking required because there's something going on Centennial 1 and in the new event centre building, we can provide parking potentially on some of the fields themselves when the conditions are right as well. So I think we do have the ability to plan for that. And that's an aside from even using the existing tennis courts, netball courts, which also can provide for parking in the future. So there's a number of different options available to us in moving forward.
Yeah, certainly just looking at what is available there, you know, the yellow is intended to be new car parking area, but even just joining it on to the existing bit of car park, but right beside it there will allow more efficient parking and get even more use out of that part of the area as well. It is a problem and so on. I think we will always have that situation with big events where people will have to walk some distance. It's what you expect elsewhere. You know, certainly, you know, if you go to any games in Forsyth Bar Stadium, you end up getting quite a tour of the city sometimes just to get there. And that's the reality of it. But yeah, we want to make sure that the week-to-week stuff is taken care of, and even the month-to-month, the North Otago games, for example, get taken care of. The big events will be less easy to deal with. You know, and we shouldn't be trying to build car parks to that size. That take those, it's not a good use of space if it's only getting used irregularly. So, Councillor Williams, next.
Thanks. I just want to make it clear that the discussions were had quite thoroughly the other day regarding as we progress through the nice to haves, which are the fact that we could encompass the grandstand into this build, that the fact that even though what we have in front of us, which is a square beside the grandstand, that isn't set in stone. As we evolve the project, of course, it could all become encompassed, and so that we're not committing at this point to that exact spot for the build. It's just, I want to make that clear to anyone watching.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Tavendale and then Councillor McGrovey.
Yeah, I agree. Parking is a big thing. I guess if you look at the maps though, and you're reminded that the current netball courts that have no parking have caused a little bit of chaos over the years. So it's an improvement on that, and you know, the netball courts might be something worth discussing in the future. But as long as we keep talking, I think we're very aware of traffic issues in that area and how we need to deal with them. So that's just got to be part of the planning moving forward, which I think was made quite clear in the document. So yeah, it's just a real positive, and as long as we keep looking at the options around things like the rugby grounds and how we work with them better, this is still the best placement, and I think we can certainly keep those discussions happening moving forward. But yeah, it was really good to see all the positive support for this site.
Thank you. Councillor McRory.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Just really reiterating what's been written here in terms of the consultation with the community, it doesn't preclude the potential for grandstand redevelopment. And I think we need to just keep that in the fore of our minds because when we look over the next section, we sort of say there's obviously some design issues that might need to be taken into account as well. Yeah, design considerations of a new facility. So somehow or other, that does need to fit into the planning project somewhere along the way. And I know it's not a priority right now, but it does seem logical to do that at a time that's cost effective rather than letting it rest for another few years until the project's finished and operating. So I would encourage the team through you, Eric, to give some real serious consideration to that. And I see that you're going to be coming up with some plans and costings for that at some point. Not too distant future, so you keep up with that. That's good. So I support it. Support the proposal, and quite exciting actually. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McRory. And I think we'll be once Mr. Van der Speek has that information come back, it's probably a good time to actually touch base with all councillors and make sure that we understand where things are at, what the issues are and opportunities are around that, and that will help the steering group take the next steps. Councillor Hopkins.
Thank you, Mayor Kircher. I'm genuinely conflicted here. My heart says I'm with the minority that this is not the right place, but the majority have clearly said it is. And I think from a sports point of view, that's probably correct. From an events point of view, and perhaps looking strategically at our future as a small town that we want to make more viable and vigorous and grow, I think it would be better closer to the heart of the town. But the community doesn't think that at the moment. And despite the problems identified, not enough space, belief by some that the site needs to be bigger and concern about parking, 90% say yes to this site. Fine, I'm not going to vote against that, but I just, as I say, I just have a feeling that what we now have to do is make this place as fantastic as it possibly can be. I agree with Bill and others that the grandstand has to be, or the relocation or replacement of the grandstand has to be incorporated in this and can be done so, in my view, in a way that makes the whole thing even more exciting. And I find myself in sympathy with the young people. I was really impressed with the number of young people from schools who submitted. And I liked some of the submissions from Oamaru Intermediate. I talked about Leilani Dilla Ford, for instance, said, if placed at Centennial Park, it won't be as big as we would anticipate. Not only would it lack ambition from yourselves, it won't take into account that Oamaru will have an expanding population. I have been, she said, to tournaments in Invercargill that have an amazing facility. And just because we are a smaller town doesn't mean we can't do better. And Sienna Crane said, it's a very nice place, but there are a few problems. Do not shy away from making this great. You have the resources, so let's do it. Be ambitious. Do not shy away from making this great. And I remember Doug Hurst years ago at the very start of this process saying the same thing. He said, if you want it to work, aim high. Don't build to a budget, build to an ambition, build to a vision, and create a venue and a facility that aims to actually generate regional and national engagement and involvement and use. And I'm just flagging that I think some of the ideas about the nice to haves that are mentioned perhaps obliquely in recommendation 3 will in the future prove to be good to haves. We have a facility at the moment that I think focuses on current needs and current uses. I'd like to see it future-proofed a bit more bigger and more flexible and more capable of accommodating changing patterns of recreation and use. But as I say, I'm conflicted, but I think in this instance, the community has said it likes where it is, and I don't intend at this stage to be an old grump and a curmudgeon and vote against it, although I still think there are better places for it to go.
Thank you, Councillor Hopkins. Would you entertain us with your ideas on where it could go and what the cost might be and how you would pay for that?
Because there are a number of sites. I don't think the business case we had went into quite enough detail in terms of analysing income streams, and it tended to rely too much, in my view, on subsidy from rates. I still stand by the view that if we want this to work, one of the ways it will make it great, one of the ways it will actually mean that it will deliver what these young people who are the future of the town and who are worried about the future and want it to be fantastic. One of the ways that we can make it great is to make it as big and bold as possible. I'm perfectly happy to spend 2 or 3 times as much money building it, as long as it makes money every year. And I believe we could and should set ourselves a goal of aiming as close to that as possible from the outset. And I accept the logic of having it on ground we don't have to buy. And all of that makes sense. I'm not arguing with that. What I am saying is, I just think, that the youngsters are saying, you do not shy away from making this great. You have the resources, be ambitious. And I think if this is going to work and it's going to be successful in terms of actually being a fantastic site and not a considerable additional cost on ratepayers, making it great is the best way to do that. Yep. And I haven't answered your question. Yep. But
well, it's near enough. I'll just see if there's any others want to speak.
I have said I'm not voting against this as well.
Yeah,
so.
yeah. I appreciate that. You've repeated a number of times it's not the right place, but it was just interested in seeing where the right place was, there were a lot of places considered, and we still haven't heard where the perfect place is. I mean, if I speak to the actual motion, I believe we are being ambitious. We're building 50% more courts than Ashburton built when they did theirs, and for our smaller population, we're aiming at a quality that's at least what theirs is, but with functionality that perhaps they didn't quite get when they built their one. We're certainly looking at more functionality than what Selwyn got with their centre in Rolleston, which is aimed mostly at sports, because we want to make sure we've got a very good event centre as well. I think we're being ambitious with how it's going to look and how it's going to work. I think it's ambitious with expectations of how it will work in the future, how it can grow and how it can meet our expectations or exceed our expectations perhaps about population growth in the future. So I'm very confident that we are going to have something that absolutely will blow those young people away, and they'll be very, very pleased with the decisions that we make. And it is our duty to make sure that we do that. Doug and Donna Hurst have put their commitment in because they want it to be an excellent centre, not because they want a mediocre one. They've been very clear. They want to have something that absolutely is one of the best or the best in the South Island, because that's generally the market that we're going to be aiming at for anything outside our local sports and events. So I'm very confident that we're going to achieve that. The fundraising is going well. The location will work well. It does future-proof it, and it's going to be something that we can all be very, very proud of when it's finished, and at a cost that ratepayers can afford, which is very important. Does anyone else wish to speak on the motion? Councillor Thompson.
Can we just put the motion, Mr. Mayor?
We certainly can.
We're holding up the bill.
Thank you very much. We don't want to be holding up the builder or yourself getting through today. So I'm going to put the motion. Those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against? That's carried. Thank you very much. Okay, now we're going to move to a request from the Waitaki District Health Services Limited for a letter of support. Mr. Palmley.
Thank you, Mayor Kircher. Very briefly, the Waitaki District Health Services is our council-controlled organisation. It provides a really important role and function in the health of our communities, but as you know, it's faced some financial challenges in recent years, but it's now well on the path to dealing with those financial challenges, but not quite there yet. This council's previously provided a letter of support to enable the company to pass the going concern test. And once again, we've had a request in for that support, a letter of support for this year, in order that it can meet that test. The letter also seeks an extension of the loan facility that we currently provide to the hospital and the investment in the services there. So simple requests really here to continue to provide a letter of support and to extend the loan facility to enable those services to continue and to progress.
Thank you very much. Okay, any questions from anyone? There are none. Okay. Someone like to move the motion? Yeah, Councillor McRoberts and seconded Councillor Tavendale. Thank you. Anyone wanting to speak to it? No. Pretty straightforward. Councillor Kingham.
Yeah, look, I was just going to say that it's reasonably straightforward. It's just something I think that we've got to do in the circumstances, and I think be happy to do so.
Thank you. Councillor Williams.
Yeah, I just want to point out that there's certainly nothing ominous about us continuing to support the hospital. We're just making sure they can continue on their positive path out of a bad situation, which they are doing very well. So they just need our help, our support for a little bit longer. So there's certainly no reason for us not to carry on the way that we're heading right now.
Councillor Tavendale.
Yeah, I tend to agree. Like, there's still a way to go, and this is always going to take longer than we'd like to see it take. But it's a real positive, the direction they are going in financially, and you know, we've got to do what we can as a community, and it goes right down to our strategic priorities around looking after our community. And this is pretty high on my list of priorities to make sure we look after it and do it well.
Yeah, Councillor Hopkins.
Very briefly, I wasn't going to say anything, but Councillor Williams' comment does remind me that people watching may think that there are more fundamental issues than there are. The letter we have to write is essentially because audit, once again, has sort of formed views that don't necessarily gel with ours or arguably reality. But the notion is that they want this letter just to satisfy themselves, so they go and concern letter. So, I mean, people need to be reassured that there's not a looming crisis there. It's this essentially it's a formality or technicality to satisfy an audit requirement.
Thank you. Yeah, no, absolutely. And yeah, we're working on ways with the hospital company on how they can get some of their more funding and so forth, which will keep them going very well through this next couple of years as they continue to get back onto a very firm financial footing. Right, any other comments? Okay, I'm going to put the motion in front of us. Those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against? That is carried. Okay, so next up we've got a item 4.3, request for extended leave of absence. That's by Casey Linklater from the Wahimo Community Board. Sorry, Councillor Thompson, do you want to move?
I was going to move.
You're moving that? Okay, and seconded Councillor Tavendale. Any discussion? Councillor Thompson?
Just to me, it's unfortunate that the member of the community board has to resign, or not, sorry, not take leave. because staying on would cause conflict with her maternity leave. So I totally support Casey and look forward to seeing her back in the new year.
Councillor Hopkins.
Yeah, look, I'm totally supportive of the request. The thing that interested me in this report was that the reference on page 17 of our agenda to clause 13.3 of our standing orders, which said that council may grant a member leave of absence. The council may delegate the power to grant a leave of absence to the mayor in order to protect the member's privacy. The mayor may approve an application, the council may approve an application with the mayor. The mayor will advise all members. I don't know how we missed that, because in my view, that is a delegation you should have. And I'm just wondering how quickly we can implement that or change the standing orders so that that clause is amended to give you that delegation. I think it's a much more appropriate way of dealing with these things. They don't come up very often, but my view is it's a power I would be perfectly comfortable to delegate to you. And I hope other councillors would as well, given the safeguards that are built into that clause.
Yeah, we can discuss that separately to this meeting. We've got what we've got in front of us, and so just in dealing with this, I certainly appreciate that comment. Okay, if there's nothing else, I'll put the would you give a second? Yeah. Put the motion. Those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those against, that is carried. Now we got item 5.1, which is our other community boards receiving a resignation from community board member Peter Ellis. So pretty straightforward again. Mr. Ellis had moved away. He's had a leave of absence. He's now resigned. It puts it within the 12-month period before the election, and that gives the community board the ability to either decide that they want to co-opt someone or for a or to leave the vacancy and through to the election. So this is basically acknowledging that resignation and also just acknowledging the contribution that Mr. Ellis made in the time that he was there. So Councillor Tavendale, you want to move that one? Yeah. And seconded Councillor McRoby. Thank you. Just speaking very quickly to it. So Mr. Ellis had been part of the Oamaru community for a long time. He'd moved to Kura and was very involved in that community, particularly around the museum and information centre and so on. He became a community board member, unfortunately not for a long time, but he made his contribution while he was there, and certainly want to acknowledge the work that he did for the Hariri ward. Councillor McRoby, do you have anything you want to add?
Excellent contribution.
Microphone.
Pardon me. Yeah, he made an excellent contribution and represented his area very well. And moving ahead, it would be good to have anybody that is interested to be co-opted from that area just to represent the Duntree and Kura area. So no, congratulations to Peter for what he contributed, and we'll miss him.
Thank you very much. With that, we'll put it. Those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those against, and that is carried. We have 3 presentations, people, but we're well ahead of time. So we'll see if we can get any of them brought forward. In the meantime, we're going to have to go on a slight break from the meeting. Just double check there's nothing. Yeah. There's nothing else that we can do in the meantime. So we'll adjourn the meeting and come back, if not before then, but certainly at 10 o'clock. So thank you.
How was your weekend?
Okay. Should be right to go. So you've got a presentation to go to be shared, is it?
We do,
Okay.
but that's fine. We can just talk through this. And if it appears, it appears. It's
Okay.
good. All right.
Yep,
So
get out
look,
of the way.
I mean, really, the last 12 months, the 2021 irrigation season, which is what it's all about for us, it comes as no surprise to anybody that it was an exceptionally dry year last year. I think from memory we got to about the second to last week of the year, and we'd only had 270 millimetres of rain. So we had started our irrigation season incredibly early, and we didn't know it then, but we had to drive it hard for right up to May. So it was an exceptionally dry year, an exceptionally long year. The scheme was under pressure all the time, but it performed incredibly well. So we were very happy. It's a weird thing of these masks and glasses, they are incompatible things. And in amongst all of that, we had to deal with COVID. So again, it's stuff that everyone's well familiar with. So to put the water use in perspective, we went through 60 million cubic metres last year. That was up 60% on the year before, and the year before was quite high. That graph, very briefly, gives you some perspective. The red being the actual use for the 2021 year. You can see that relative to the long-term average, which is the green line. So, way above the long-run average. And I guess the takeaway from that really is that if you, in a year like last year, if you're a dryland farmer, you had to make certain calls because you simply didn't have rainfall and water. If you're an irrigated farmer, you are probably incredibly pleased with the fact that you were a NOIC shareholder and you had water on demand when you needed it, and you didn't miss a beat in terms of your farming operations. So the year was full of a bunch of highlights. Key amongst those was the restructuring of our debt facilities. We genuinely appreciate the partnership that we enjoy with the council, which resulted in a new facility with the council. It was the last time I was here, actually, I think, and that was voted on. What that, in practical terms, has resulted in is on Friday last week, we paid the council $159,400 and something, which was a tranche of money that arose from the sale of shares in the preceding 3 or 4 months. So when the income from those shares was received, it was allocated out as per our facility arrangement. So there we go. That's important for us. We're obligated to do that, but it enables us to reduce our debt position. So restructuring our debt facilities is consistent with the company's approach to its total debt position, which is to see that reduce at a very positive rate to the point where by 2030 we're on track to have reduced that by about $25 million overall. So our environmental investment continues. We got good audit pass rate last year and good engagement, more importantly, from our farmer shareholders. Along the time, the assets of the scheme were revalued, mainly as a result of material cost rises and other bits and pieces. There was a net $8.5 million increase in the scheme valuation to now $168 million. COVID came and went and came again. And as an essential business, we were able to continue our operations, our maintenance program, and with virtually no disruption to the way we went about things in terms of service as it was to our shareholders. Very much a change of the way that we worked, of course, both internally and with our contractors. We made a bunch of capital investment decisions. We'll get to those in a moment. But mostly those were around strategic calls and the elimination of significant risk. And overall, we had a strong financial performance, and the auditors came and had a look at how we do things and went away providing the board with an audit report, which the board was very confident about. So key investment occurred during the year. Two of our major motors at our pump station 1 area were replaced at $500,000 total cost. Those tend to have a expected life of around 20 to 24 years. And we've learned an awful lot in the last, I suppose, 15 years, 16 years about how to run these motors. And so we're fully expecting to get the full life out of those. We've implemented, or in the process of implementing, an asset management system that'll be underway and operational in the next few months. And that's going to be significant in the way that we manage our assets and determine a capital plan going forward. A couple of major things that occurred. We did sell our high voltage assets as you drive along State Highway 83, and you see those assets on the side of the road around, and they're enclosed in a big fence. Those are no longer ours. They are owned appropriately by an electricity distribution business and not by a water infrastructure business. So that sale occurred, and the assets are under use exclusively for our purpose, and we have, strong contractual arrangements with Network Waitaki for the delivery of service. Key amongst all of that was a second and new transformer at Black Point. These don't come cheap, but it was absolutely essential to mitigate the risk that having one transformer being effectively the gateway asset to continuing to be able to run the scheme. And had that failed, we would have been in a very, very deep hole. So we've now got N+1 redundancy through that second transformer, and that's a satisfactory outcome. Our environmental focus continues. We've obviously developed a bit of a reputation for the delivery of our environmental management system, and we were asked by the Kura-Duntroon company to run their program for them. That adds about another 68 shareholders to our 175. We're well underway in doing that. We use our farm environment plan as we've always done. Of course, you may or may not be aware, but the policy statement on freshwater is going to require a freshwater farm plan from next year onwards for all farms in the country. And as a result, we feel that, or as a result of our having made use of a farm environment plan for the last 15 years, we feel that we're in a very, very good position to simply transition to the use of that freshwater plan that is going to be mandated by the government. We continue our relationships at a catchment level with the North Otago Sustainable Land Management Group, the catchment group, NOSLAM. We are developing a very strong and useful working relationship with the Te Runanga o Maraki, and we have a joint project that we're doing at Borton's Pond that ties in with their wetland restoration activity and our own interest in fish populations in that area. So that's a boots on the ground, tangible project which is going really well. We continue our relationship at a broader level through industry sector groups. The Waitaki Irrigators Collective for our more regional interests, and the Irrigation New Zealand for national advocacy. But in the environmental space, our absolute objective, and so far we've been able to deliver on that objective, is a permanent state of compliance. And we're very mindful that, you know, we all know what the government's direction is on these things now, and pressure is going to remain. We're conscious of the pressure that puts on our farmers. It's very real. It has some bearing on how much farming is enjoyed these days, I think. The amount of bureaucracy that the regulatory process requires of them, and we're cognizant of that and do our very best to make it as painless as possible, whilst at the same time, as I said, remaining as a company and as a group of farming entities 100% compliant. We did have some, as you'll appreciate, with a long, hard season, power expenditure increased, but our fundamental cost of power at 6.2 cents per kilowatt hour or cubic metre of water was a record low price. We don't expect that to continue. Power prices will rise or have risen. They're coming down a bit recently, but they will be higher. Our maintenance costs rose. We did enjoy some low interest cost benefits. We've locked in through swaps and a lot more of our debt going forward. So in line with a new treasury policy that we operate. But the important point is that 1.7 million of operating cash flow was able to fund our entire operation and infrastructure renewals. And we've repaid $2.7 million of debt, 2 million of that being to the council. So all in all, a good outcome from a financial point of view, and we've got plenty of cash in the tin for contingencies. As I mentioned earlier, we paid the council $160,000 just a few days ago. That was the result of an offer for shares, which was reasonably well uptaken, with the best part of 400 of those shares sold. The infrastructure is now 89% utilised. You know, we're virtually in our last 10%. There have been some announcements recently in terms of Plan Change 7 in the Environment Court that may have some bearing on the uptake of shares in parts of the scheme, which presently have a good supply of river water. So we would think that last 10% may well be taken up quite quickly. Anyhow, we as a company don't have a great deal of control over that. It's really up to the farmers to elect to either become an irrigated farming operation or to expand their irrigated farming footprint. But as we've said to you, when we made arrangements with our facility, all debt, all share proceeds will be used to retire debt. And that's consistent with the point that I made earlier around our capital program and our absolute desire to have a balance sheet which is substantially got a substantially higher percentage of equity. Nearly there. So key priorities for us are selling those shares, making sure that we use the proceeds to retire debt, reduce the operating costs of the scheme on a per share basis, which is a consequence of selling those shares. As I mentioned, supporting our farmers through this quite difficult period of regulatory change, maintaining, of course, our control of costs, particularly our major costs in power and interest. Using our asset management system to generate good data on infrastructure and equipment performance, enabling us to make much better decisions around our capital program. Making sure our environmental leadership position is maintained and continuing our community engagement. I mean, I think as a company and as a board, speaking for the board in this case, and Matt can corroborate, but you know, our board is very clear about the purpose of the company, what we're here to do, and how we're going to deliver that. Very, very focused on our day-to-day obligations, but maintaining a 10 and in some cases a very much longer than 10-year perspective. One of those considerations, of course, is how climate change is going to affect farming in North Otago. what that will do to water demand, how we as a company need to adapt to that, and how we will manage water and the delivery of water going forward under what it might be quite different conditions. So thank you very much. Whoops, one too many, but that's a sort of a bit of a quick run through of our year in review and how we're going and where we're looking at things. And I'm obviously we're very happy for any questions.
Thank you very much
Amazing.
For that presentation. It's appreciated. And yeah, a lot of work going on and a lot of ongoing investment for the benefit of Waitaki district. So thank you. Councillors, any questions? You've covered things so very well. Councillor Hopkins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you. Fantastic report. Amazing increase in water supply. Drought figures. I hadn't realised just how dry we were, but a couple of questions. On page 45, you talk about, you say you've sold 397 shares this year and you've still got 1,950 to sell. On page 63, it may be a different kind of share, but you say on page 63, there's a reference to 17,427 shares issued, but there's 20,000 authorised. And I'm just trying to, A, I'm trying to work out why those figures are different, and B, are you still concerned that you've got 1,950 to sell, 1,950 shares to sell? Sorry for any confusion in the maths, but my understanding is we have 2175 to sell. So the 2,000 left to sell of 20,000 is quite a key milestone figure. So we're keen to get that 175 and get under the 2,000 figure. But the short answer is that once, long time back in the day, the scheme was built to effectively provide water across something in the order of 23,000 hectares. And the maths on that was simply that we irrigate about 1 to 1.3 hectares per share. And the share gives you a flow rate and a volume of water calculated on a daily basis, which ends up at 3.4 millimetres a day, which is about what a farm needs. And so, but that was very speculative back in the day. I mean, the visionaries who created the North Otago Irrigation Company didn't know there was 23,000 or 26,000 or 18,000 hectares that would be uptaken and irrigated. It was just a best guess estimate of what the ultimate demand would be. And so the scheme was built accordingly with the capacity to lift 8 cubic metres of water per second into the scheme and deliver that across a command area of 68,000 hectares. Whether that number proves to be absolutely right or not, we don't know. If the irrigators on the Kakanui River, for example, are unable to take water in the same volumes from that water body in the future, which is probable, then an awful lot of that 2,000 residual shares will go to replacing that water. As we stand, though, the cost per share in charges to farmers is for the most part an acceptable figure, and it's very comparable with the cost per share that Canterbury farmers pay for water in that part of the world. And our water is a hell of a lot more reliable than theirs, so the service quality is better than most Canterbury farmers get. If we can sell more shares, we can spread the fixed cost of operating the business across a broader base, and it'll have the effect of reducing that cost per share. So look, we're in a comfortable position. I'm happy for Matt to comment here, but I think we're in a pretty comfortable position that can only get better with the sale of those further shares.
Thank you.
Just 1 second, Matt.
I'll just add to specifically answer your question. I haven't got the pages that you're looking at in front of me, but we've just got to be careful. Sometimes you end up in two different conversations. So like Andrew said, if we're comparing the number of hectares that we irrigate versus the shares in the scheme, sometimes individual farmers will have a share and push it further. So they might do 1.3 hectares to the one share. So without seeing your papers, it could well be you're comparing a hectares watered versus a share. And so, yeah, just to clarify.
If I can just give a little bit of other background, Matt can probably remember these days too. Originally, the consent was 8 cubic meters per second out of the Waitaki River to do 20,000 hectares. It was based on 4 litres a second per hectare per day. And I think that was the number. And it was actually, it had come from the Canterbury experience. There was a feeling all the way through that we can probably stretch that a bit further because, well, we've got great North Otago soils. We're nowhere near as free draining as a lot of their soils and so forth. And so the opportunity was there to stretch it. And even those early sales, particularly where people were getting a modest amount of shares, they were buying them with the hope that they would be able to stretch them that bit further. And generally that's been the case, I think. So which has obviously been a great result for whatever the share cost was. They were actually getting more than 1 hectare irrigated in many cases, which just helped the whole economics of it.
No, look, that's fine. It is as a reference on page 64 to the fact that you've got 17,427 ordinary shares issued of 20,000 authorised. And all I'm saying is that doesn't quite tally numerically with the information on page 45. But that's fine. The real question was, are you worried? And you've said no. So I'm quite comfortable with that. The other question, and you mentioned interest rates, they've been good, obviously, both with the bank and with us. Prediction is again that, well, they have started to move up and may move up, reasonably significantly. Obviously that is a risk. How big a risk is it? And do you think you'll cope with it if there are significant increases?
Yeah, it's a cost that could be problematic at a point in time, but we try to anticipate what's going to happen. We use the professional services of a company called Bancorp, who provide a treasury service to us on a consultancy basis and give us advice at a professional level on what we should do and how we should cover interest rates. I mean, the fact is that you couldn't have had this scheme without a significant amount of debt, and that debt comes at a cost of interest, and we don't have any control particularly over what happens to it. We've got to ride with the storm, but be prudent along the way, and that prudence is reflected in our use of Bancorp and a policy which puts our fixed interest component of debt within bands, and we are very careful to maintain our position within the bands in that policy. And as I mentioned, to that end, we've just taken out another 12 or $14 million of swap rate debt, which based on, and that was done about 4 months ago, based on the projections that have come out more recently, was a very inspired move on our part. And I smile because it is a bit of a gamble. We've been on the wrong end of some fixed interest debt, which, when interest rates were 1.whatever% total, including margin, and we were paying 4.5%, was not a happy situation. But hey, you do this stuff because you fix your interest at a cost that your business can support. And if it goes for you, that's great. If it goes against you, well, at least you know what you're in for.
Thank you. Mr. Neal.
Yeah, sorry, just on that, I noticed in your income statement that you'd had $2.5 million almost of fair value gain go through your P&L, which turned a loss pre-revaluation into a gain. Are Bancorp helping you understand the potential to hedge account and take some of that volatility out of the P&L?
Well, we do hedge account. Yep, we definitely.
Just not the whole shebang.
No, but I mean the revaluation was a little bit of a mixed bag. We had in fact in gross terms we had just over $11 million of revaluation, but we offset that with some concerns about some components in the scheme. And what we've done is taken a conservative position on that. There's some couplers that connect pipelines together, and we've had a couple of those leak, and there are a lot of them out there. And so we've taken a conservative approach to write down the value, if you like, from a fair value perspective, in its entirety, while we undertake a program of investigation, which will literally dig holes in the ground and determine how big a problem this is. If it's the whole problem, we've already taken it on the chin, so to speak. If it's less than the whole problem, we can write back up the value. So, okay.
Yeah, no, thank you. And I was just making sure that you were making the most of the hedge accounting to reduce that volatility through the P&L.
I'll just add too, for the benefit of the councillors, the company is required to do every 3 years, we do a full valuation. So that's why the reference to it this time around. This is that part of the cycle as part of our audit process, and obviously a revaluation of the assets, but not for the purpose of trying to create or encourage an increase in equity. It's purely to revalue the assets at that snapshot in time.
Thank you. Next, Councillor Percival, and then Councillor Williams.
Yeah, I'm just interested in that 9 million increase of equity. So I'm looking at the thing. I'm not an accountant, so, but if the shares value is static, was that just a pay down of liabilities? Oh,
So to the point that Matt just made, it's a statutory requirement of the company that the assets are revalued every 3 years. As a result of that revaluation, the valuers determined that the value of the infrastructure had risen by $11.5 million. And so following good accounting practice, there was a fair value adjustment to that. So it was nothing to do with the shares. And what it does have an impact on is the balance sheet. And it does have the benefit, if you like, of increasing the equity position of the business. And there are depreciation implications, of course, but those are non-cash. So as a result of all of this, we come out with schemes worth more. The relative equity of the equity holders is higher than it was, and so that's all positive. But we're not. I mean, we're realistic about what it really means, and how long it'll. I mean, the next revaluation may be quite different, but we've been through a bizarre period of materials cost, and both the materials and the logistics of getting them to New Zealand, and that's had a dramatic effect on the value of the scheme.
Councillor Williams.
Thanks for the very thorough and interesting report. I've just got an inquiry more along environmental lines. This morning I was reading a story on Stuff, and it was talking about the Canterbury braided rivers and how badly they're being affected by agricultural use and irrigation. And I'm just wondering how NOIC's practices perhaps differ, or what we have in place to ensure that that would never happen to our mighty Waitaki.
It's controlled, 100% controlled. It has a supporting plan and regulatory flow regime. And so that's a number of years and a lot of work's gone into that. So I think the river is sustainable in the balance between what's allocated to come out of it. So that is in balance, and it's been subject of right back to the ministerial call in 2003. So there's been an awful lot of work going to looking after the river. Then I guess it turns to, for those of you that do take water from the river, having not just good farming systems, but accountability to our environmental practice to make sure that the activity on the ground as a function of using water is at best practiced and preferably even in front of that. We have to stay in front of expectations. So we're fortunate we've got a good environment, we've got a good climate here, and we're fortunate we're in a zone with relatively good water quality. So we are considered a green zone by Environment Canterbury, and Otago is obviously still working its way through its planning framework to what that looks like. So I'm comfortable as a person living in the community that the river is being looked after. It's a big, particularly large river, and the balance between all the activities is balanced, and it's got supporting planning framework to look after that. The important thing then is that the farmers are doing a good job, and I think they are. The Noik farmers are certainly doing a good job, and we've got existing processes in place to make sure that is inflation adjusted. So year on year, you have to be better. It's not about just reaching a mark and staying there. You have to keep improving. So my answer is yes, and the other way is how.
Thank you very much. Okay, any other questions at all? Someone like to move, we received the information. Councillor Hopkins, thank you. Councillor McRoby seconded that. No further discussion. Put it, those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against, that's carried. Thank you very much for coming along today, gentlemen. Sorry about the delays around technology and so forth, but appreciate you being here, and certainly appreciate the benefits that North Otago Irrigation Company brings to our community, not just the water on farms, but some of the other work you're doing as well. So it's appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Okay, councillors, we're now going to be hearing from the Waitaki Community Recreation Centre with their annual report. So we'll just ask for them to come in. Yep, no, good as gold. Okay, so yeah, on page 283 for that. And just acknowledge too that if you we've got Councillor Holding, who's our representative on that trust, and if you've got any really curly questions, ask him first. It would be fine. Welcome along, Untitled. So thank you very much for joining us today, and basically hand over to you just to introduce your report and cover off any points you want to, and then we'll ask for questions from there. So just using the microphone, just the sort of bar there, just press the part on the right hand side when you want to speak, and then press it again when you finish. That'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you. So is it working? Tēnā koutou katoa, ko Untitled noa taku ingoa. Thank you for the opportunity to come along and present the report on the Waitaki Community Recreation Centre. There was a PowerPoint, no?
Yes.
Oh yeah, oh that's okay. Yep. It's not seminal, but yeah, since we did it, we should have a look at that, I guess. Yeah. So the report's from the 1st of July 2020 to the 30th of June 2021. Obviously, some other things have happened since then, but this report refers to that period of time. So if we were looking at the PowerPoint, so we continue to play an important part, we think, in the well-being opportunities for indoor recreation, fitness and health in our community, and the centre's used for a whole variety of things. I think that's probably one of the key things, is it's across a lot of demographics. People from all areas of the region come and use the centre for a whole lot of different reasons. So in terms of a summary, there's a positive financial result. If you go through the report, you'll see that we've got a result of 12,000 surplus, however, that is tagged for some maintenance work that we've got planned. So we're more or less break even. We've got our regular new activities and events, some maintenance projects completed, a couple of big ones that we've got that are coming up. We're hoping to get them done over Christmas and New Year. So those are two big projects around redoing all the floors and redoing the lighting. So I've been working on that for quite some time, getting some funding together, and I'm just waiting to hear about the result of some more funding. So hopefully we can go ahead with that and we get the tradies all lined up and get that all done at Christmas time. The flooring, the surface of the floors and stuff has been deteriorating for quite some time, and it got quite bad earlier this year. So we really need to push go on that and get that happening. And the lighting system is pretty obsolete now. It takes how many people to change a light bulb? Yeah, cherry pick 10 men and whatever else it takes. So it's not done easily. So it'll be really good to get those two new systems in place. In terms of the usage, like we've had like some events like the sports awards, they've been really successful the last couple of years. It's been a really big event from our behalf. I'm part of the North Otago sports bodies as well. So it's a key event that the sports bodies organised. So we got that in at the rec centre now. I'm holding on to it there for as long as we can keep having it there. And I think we've had a pretty good show there the last couple of years. So it was good to have that. We had a multitude of events being cancelled over the time. However, the usage for the centre, we're showing that we're probably 35% up on the previous year. Lots of things were cancelled because of COVID, but even 15% up on the year before that, probably because some of the things got postponed, shifted in and kind of concertinated into that. Particularly the second half of 2020. So that was looking quite good. If we've got, obviously, one of the key users is basketball. And so that's been going, it's been affected by COVID, as has everything, but we still had fairly full season for that. And we also had the Filipino Waitaki Incorporated, they run their basketball as well. And we run a basketball competition as well. So that's one of the key users. We have regular Taekwondo. One of the Taekwondo clubs runs their club out of there. They have 2 nights a week. We have the Alpine Club 2 nights a week. Oh, okay, thanks. Oh, that's probably a bit much for me. Crikey. Okay, all right. And I'm not necessarily sticking to the script. Okay. Volleyball, indoor football, because we're on that page. We indoor football Waitaki run forever and had a really hot, sweaty, strong competition there every Monday night with heaps of teams and things. They were having trouble with volunteers, and so last year, in that last financial year, they approached us and we said yes, we'd run it, but it just didn't go so well. We couldn't get the teams and stuff. So, but they've stepped back in and running it again, so that's quite good. And also with football South being really strong, lots of kids in that playing football, they've introduced kids indoor futsal, and that's starting next week, I think, or the week after, and that's like super oversubscribed. So hopefully that's really going to take off. So hopefully we'll get good usage of that higher use there at the rec centre. Glasses fogging up, sorry. Oh, do I have to point this at something to do it? Oh, Tai Chi, that's been going for some time. Taekwondo, as I said, netball used quite a bit, but then of course with the demise of the netball season, and because they couldn't play on their courts, etc., there was less usage for us for practices, and there was a development camp, etc., went on, and then a whole range of other sports, just kind of showing the variety that goes on there. Got lots of roller skating going on at the moment. That's quite cool. In terms of the tournaments, with the whole COVID thing, that obviously meant that quite a few things were cancelled. So we did manage to still run some events within the restrictions or within the timeframes that we had. Tournaments, sports tournaments, events like as varied as, we have quite a lot of church use and stuff. Church groups use the centre and have their regional conferences, not so much now, just mostly because of the COVID issues, but so there's quite a varied use there, not just sports groups and things coming in and using the centre. And we run some competitions. We have some health, we have massage therapists based at the centre. We've had over the last few years massage, and we had physiotherapists. Now we've got massage therapists based in the centre there. So it's quite good to have those sort of allied health services going on as well. we run a range of programs right through from kids. We run kids holiday programs, which are really popular, and they're always well subscribed. We run some stuff for 3 and 4 year olds and primary school kids and stuff, but the demand has decreased for that. Also for we run a creche, that demand has decreased as well. Some of it's just about patterns and the demographics and what people are doing at the time, but some of it's definitely that reluctance to come back in and do stuff, you know, the thing that everybody's kind of dealing with. As I said, the overall usage is up in terms of the hire, but not so much in terms of some of the programs and things that we've been running. Just some more information on there about our holiday program, Mini Movers, the creche, Fun Fit Kids, Senior Strongs program we run for people who have issues with mobility, etc. And that's the room gets filled up with that. And that's one of the programs that's interesting, has not been a demise in numbers around that. People are still really keen to come along and do that. So there's a real social connection there as well for people. You know, people often say, you know, they get a bit lonely, they'll come along and do that and get the physical benefits out of the movement and stuff as well. So there's a number of those programs running around the town. We are well south qualified for that and certified for that. And we've got a good steady patronage with that. So it's good to see that program keeping on going. And the climbing wall, the Alpine Club do a huge amount of voluntary work in that. They own the climbing walls, and we have a partnership with them around the use of the gym space and also the bouldering wall, which is a new in the last couple of years. So that gets a lot of use in club nights, and it gets you know, a trickle of people coming in and out using it, casual hire and stuff. So that's going well, and the guys have always got ambitions about how to expand things and make them bigger and better. In terms of maintenance and stuff, I said we've got this, we did get new carpet and we did recover a whole lot of equipment in the weights room. Our weights room, you know, the building is over 30 years old. The weights room, some of the equipment is over 30 years old. It's still functional. We keep it up to scratch. It's not the newest place around, but it's got its own atmosphere and things. Different facilities have different atmospheres, and so people come to us because they want it. They like what they find there. It's sort of low key, chilled, friendly, not too busy. Then, as I said about maintenance, we've got these 2 big projects coming up, so I'm hoping that they'll be in next year's report with a big tick and some lovely photos around what we've managed to do with that. So we've secured quite a bit of funding towards that. Partnerships. We work a lot with Sport Waitaki, work a lot with Sport Waitaki through my connection with the North Otago sports bodies as well. So that's through the Sports Awards and the Hall of the Waitaki Sports Hall of Fame. And we also work with them closely on doing things not in the centre, but we help with what was the Rainbow Run and was now going to be the multicoloured dash, which we've had to put off until the beginning of next year. It's just a way of getting people active in a fun way, and that's something that we've become involved in over the last few years as well. We worked with Plunket to raise funds locally for North Otago Plunket. Yeah, so we work closely with Pip from Sport Waitaki on quite a few things that we do. And the financial sustainability, as I said, positive financial performance. We get financial contributions from the school, and we collaborate with them in terms of maybe consumables and stuff like that. We can get them slightly cheaper. We get generous sponsorship from you guys. Thank you very much. And we actively source funds from all sorts of other areas to try and keep things ticking over and get new things done. And we do have some sponsorship from Laser Plumbing as well. So pretty much I guess that's it. We're still doing what we do. We're still catering to a really wide range of people, doing who are coming and using the place for a whole variety of things. If anyone's been along there, you know, you'll see it's really packed on a mini ball night with people in and out all over the place, or someone's coming in roller skating, or someone once practiced their remote controlled helicopter flying in there once. It was very small though, so it was safe. So there's a whole variety of groups of people, a really strong community through the Filipino basketball and they use the centre for other things as well. A lot of Pacific Island groups come in and use the centre as well. And it's great to see because they're coming in from the little kids right through to the older ones. It's a really nice way of bringing community together and keeping everybody being active and doing stuff together. So we work a lot with different groups in the PI community to try and keep those things going. Yes. At the risk of just rabbiting on, any questions? Thank you.
Right, thank you very much, Diane. That's much appreciated. And obviously the centre is still a very well used and much appreciated place. Councillors, any questions? Councillor Hopkins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, just a couple of that. Amazing you can have things like small ball rifle tournaments there. But also, I noticed you've got a couple of out of town schools, St Joseph from Dunedin and East Otago. What do they use the centre for? I mean, it's a long way to come from Dunedin to here, for the sake of argument.
The climbing, rock climbing. So there's some schools from out of town, a couple of Dunedin schools who regularly come. And we also have some other schools, like one global school, I think was the name, and they came because they were coming to Oamaru and they wanted a space to do some recreation stuff with the kids. So they were out of town. I think they were Timaru based schools. So sometimes in Te Kura, the correspondence school will come. It's a way of bringing people sort of from the rural areas and trying to bring them in. They haven't got great numbers with that, but they do keep trying to do it. So they come and use our space, and sometimes the instructor will do stuff with the kids and things like that. So yeah.
Thank you. Look, the other question, and this may seem negative, it's not meant to be. On page 89, you've got hours for all the activities up from 8:51 to 1349, so that's 500 extra hours. Casual users up from 650 to 724. And yet your members are down, casual users are down, and the creche hours are down. So I just can't tally those two apparently contradictory sets of stats.
Fair enough. That's probably not quite clear enough. The usage that's up is the gym, the indoor sports court hire. The usage that's down is more our services and programs we specifically provide around the fitness and the members, and some of the programs we run, like the kids fitness programs and things like that. Some of those things, the numbers have been down. The usage, the 35% up, that's the gym hire. So the groups are coming in either for organised sport or casual recreation and events and gatherings.
Is COVID effective for that?
Yes, it is. I think it is. We've started, I mean, there's lots of competing factors in the community and there's lots of things going on, but we certainly know that since last year, things dropped down and they were just starting to kind of pick up again, and now they've dropped down again. So yeah, I do think that does impact on people. They just have a reluctance to start rolling those things over again. Yeah. Yeah. And yet equally, there are other people who are banging down the door saying, when you're opening, let us in. Yeah. So yeah, but they're same as most things, I guess.
Thank you for that. Mr. Neil.
Sorry, I was just looking on the financials pages. You seem to have, you've got quite a bit of cash in the bank, 180 odd thousand. And there's also a note there under the liabilities for 15,500 of unused donations. Is there, with conditions, is there a risk that you might not get to use that?
That's the 15 grand is the towards the projects that we're getting done at Christmas time. Yeah. Yeah. That's it.
Yeah, I'd just probably make the comment too with organisations like this, having a modest amount in the bank is really necessary, you know, because you just don't know what's going to happen. And certainly these COVID days are teaching us that, you know, you could go to basically having no rental income. And that would be difficult to weather without that financial buffer. Councillor Holding.
Thanks, Di. I'll just congratulate you and the team for having another successful year in challenging conditions, and meeting that's pretty in the report highlights just the different needs of recreation across the district, and yeah, it's quite diverse group. So congratulations on a good result.
Anyone else? Councillor Tavendale.
Congratulations on a good report, and basically having to deal with a whole lot of really interesting situations being thrown at you guys. You're doing remarkably well considering. Just want to know how you guys are feeling about the new indoor event centre discussions and your ability to be part of that discussion and just the future of the rec centre moving forward.
Thank you. And yes, there's obviously there's interest. There's certainly, so we have the board, we have the staff, we have people who come in and use it. There's I think there's 90% general support for people are going, yes, this is a great thing. But it's often it's prefaced or followed by, but what's going to happen here? What's going to happen to this place? What's going to happen to you guys? What's going to happen to us? So there's, there's the questions, there's some excitement, and there's also the questions around what's going to happen, and also, and so I mean, obviously we can't answer that, but I tell people there will be an opportunity to give feedback. That's correct, is it? Will there be an opportunity to give any feedback?
Yeah, it was really good to meet with, for some of us to meet with the trust a few weeks ago, and just to talk about the opportunities. Probably the best assurance is really that we see the rec centre working with the new sports and events centre side by side, offering different things that they can specialise in, and making sure that there is a good future there. It's pretty important for a number of sports, but also for the likes of Waitaki girls who depend on that for their gymnasium space, but also for the wider community, just making sure that we're allowing as many sports as possible to have a home. So we still have to have the big discussion about it, exactly how that will look, but one of the things we have asked the trust is to do a bit of a breakdown, a bit of a cash flow on what would it look like if certain sports aren't in there, but also you don't have the same overheads because of just different operating conditions. So yeah, we certainly would like to think there's a very good future for the rec centre as well as the new sports and events centre.
Yes, thanks, Gary. And that is the case, that people are looking at that and looking at, if we are moving ahead, it would be great to be still part of that. And how would that happen, and what needs to be done to enable that to happen, what needs to be done in terms of probably a bit of the maintenance on the centre, as well as the projects we've got underway, or hopefully underway in the early part of the new year. So there's maybe some conversations around that as well. But certainly, how does it fit in? And I think people are excited about the fact that it might fit into as part of the puzzle of the new centre. Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, thank you. And yeah, thanks again for the presentation, the report, the good work that you and the trustees and staff are doing in this fairly difficult time. So it is greatly appreciated. So I'd like to move we receive the information. Councillor Hopkins, seconded Councillor Thompson. Those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against, that's carried. Thanks very much, Diane, and good to see you.
Thank you.
With that, councillors, we come to the end of the public part of the agenda. We didn't get much progress due to technical problems on the public excluded part, so we're going to go back into public excluded and carry on that. So, Councillor Holding, and move that we go into public excluded, and Councillor Halalali, thank you. Those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against, that's carried. We'll now do the transition into that. Thank you for everyone who's been watching online.